Welcome back to the Sales Think Tank, our video series that addresses customer points in today's virtual selling buyer-first era. I'm Rebecca Schnaufer, and I lead the LinkedIn Sales Solutions business for the UK and Ireland. And together with our brilliant panelists, we've been navigating the ever-shifting buyer-seller landscape. So far, over the course of the last 3 episodes, we've tackled the sales productivity challenge and considered the steps we can all take to ensure that productivity doesn't fall by the wayside in the shift to virtual selling. We've shared practical advice on how to build the pipeline virtually and identify the right opportunities and moments to reach out and meet buyers' expectations. And finally, we've delved into decoding new data signals and looked at how we can use technology to understand which intentions and signals we should be paying attention to. Clearly, 3 very thought-provoking and timely topics, and we've been absolutely blown away by your responses. We've been inundated with so many requests that we've decided to run this bonus episode where we'll be picking the brains of our leadership team to give you all the answers to your burning questions. In this episode, I'm very lucky to be joined by Sinead McCabe, Senior Director and Interim Head of LinkedIn Sales Solutions for EMEA and LATAM, Mitali Papnik, Senior Director of Product for LinkedIn Sales Solutions, and Paul Terry, Head of European Acquisition Sales for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. Welcome, everyone. To kick things off, it would be great if you could all introduce yourselves. So, Sinead, I'm going to start with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sinead McCabe. For the last 6 months, I've been the interim leader of LinkedIn Sales Solutions for EMEA and LATAM. I've been in LinkedIn for 4 years. This is actually my 4-year anniversary this week, and I've been in sales for 15 years.
Thank you, Sinead. Mitali, can I pass to you, please, now?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be back on the Sales Think Tank. So I am Mitali Patnaik. I run product for LinkedIn Sales Navigator as part of the LinkedIn Sales Solutions business. And I've been at LinkedIn for about 5 years. And I've worked in product across consumer products as well as on B2B side, but have been working in sales technology products for a while, including having started my own startup in this space. So exciting.
Pretty impressive. Thank you, Mitali. And last but by no means least, Paul Terry, over to you.
Thanks, Becky. Paul Terry is my name. I've been with LinkedIn coming up on 6 years. As you pointed out, I've been running the SMB and mid-market acquisition business across Europe for that time. And actually in July, I'm going to be pivoting over and leading our enterprise business across Europe and LATAM. So very excited for that. I've been in sales all of my career. And in fact, had the great privilege of being a very early client of LinkedIn Sales Solutions as far back as 2012, and was so taken with the vision and the direction that the business was taking at that time. Some years later, I orchestrated the opportunity to join the team, and I've been here ever since. So delighted to be here with you guys today.
Thank you, Paul, and congratulations on the new role. So thank you, everyone. Now it's time to get started. From everyone's questions, it was clear that many of you were keen to find out about how you build relationships in a virtual world. So I'm going to start with that. Sinead, I'm going to come to you first. What advice do you have for not only building, but actually strengthening relationships with customers remotely? I think it's really important that we build rapport. How do we do that across those Zoom calls, for example?
I think building relationships with customers will always be about interaction. But that level of human contact doesn't necessarily begin and end with face-to-face meetings, as we've all found out this year. It's true that a Zoom call doesn't really lend itself to small talk, but you can still make a memorable and lasting impression by putting yourself in your customer's shoes and understanding their needs, how you can add value to their business right now. So our research tells us that 90% of C-suite executives don't respond to in-person meetings. Clearly, engaging with personal outreach is therefore crucial. And this is why there's no substitute for doing your homework. If you come to a Zoom meeting or your Teams meeting knowing your customers' pain points right now, or what type of content they're engaging in or posting online, what makes them tick, then you can make an impression that's far more valuable and memorable than small talk. So I'd say that sales is really a contact sport in many respects, with people and relationships at its heart.
Yeah.
And this is also where having the right sales technology can help you build better relationships, using the interconnectivity of your company as a starting point with tools such as LinkedIn. You can tap into social networks of your colleagues and pinpoint existing relationships or personal links, which can also be helpful in establishing ground and building relationships.
Yeah, that's such a good point there. Picking up on your point about sales being that sort of that contact sport, that touch point, and one that's driven by interactions that we have with other people. One of our viewers is really keen to find out how we keep our sales teams motivated without having that, day-to-day human interaction that they're used to.
I think we've talked a lot about in the past about how to build relationships with our customers in the current climate, but we also need to focus on maintaining relationships with our teams. They're the key to our success. Yeah. Making people feel valued and connected when many of us are still working remotely, in my experience, helps drive that motivation, because we have been asking our teams to step up and do more and more. Like, in my view, even just scheduling a coffee or a normal work-related catch-up can really make a difference and remind people that they're not alone. Like when the pandemic started, I had quite a large team of ICs and managers. And these are people that I would have seen day to day, spoken to, I sat beside them, and I have to say I missed them. But I actually, at the start of the pandemic, I decided that I would contact 10 of them a week, not business related, just to ping them or talk to them to see how they were, because I really wanted to know how they were, and I missed them, and I wanted to, it was a genuine kind of, how are you? Let's not talk about work, let's see how you are. And I think that people expect that and respect that and know that you care about them. So I think it is really important not to neglect your team and to focus on them just as much as your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. That, being thoughtful and as you say, putting time in the diary to do these things so that they actually happen. We're all very, very busy, and sometimes the weeks just roll ahead of us before we know where we are. We're June, right? So staying with the relationship building. Sinead, you mentioned earlier how important it is to gather information on your customers. That research phase is important, not only when it comes to strengthening the relationship, but also getting into to meet customers in the first place. Paul, how do you think we can take the research that we have on our customers, and indeed the people that the individuals that we're trying to sell to, and use it to work out what products and what solutions or services they might need?
Well, firstly, let's think about how we set ourselves apart. How do we differentiate ourselves from all of the other sales organizations and salespeople that are out in the marketplace? Mm-hmm. If you put yourself in the shoes of the buyer for a moment and just try to factor in and think about how many outreaches are they fielding on a daily basis? How many times are there shots in the dark, mass mails, cold calls, undifferentiated communication sent to them? And what are they doing to duck and weave and avoid those? So firstly, you mentioned research. So the simple act of doing the research and tailoring your outreach to a specific buyer and to their situation, it already sets you apart, right? So it says, I care. I care enough about you. I care enough about your situation that I've given this some thought. And here's what I think. And that's already creating a lot of daylight between yourself and those who are practicing what I would call conventional sales tactics. Mm-hmm. Sales tactics that may have worked in times gone by, where that wonderful question of what keeps you awake at night was on the lips of every trained B2B salesperson. So firstly, that's a starting point. Be specific, be targeted, do your research, and send that message that you care. Then once you've done that, and once you're trying to figure out where to go with that conversation, well, the artificial intelligence that is embedded in so many tools today, among them LinkedIn Sales Navigator, that helps you to take a very large universe of potential buyers and clients and prospects and zero down on those for whom your products and services will most likely resonate. And it does that by looking at who are the people with whom you're working today, what other companies, what other contacts are out there that look and feel or behave like those with whom you're already working and to whom you're already delivering value. So using that research to scale it down to a level of granularity that allows you to get very personal, that's where you get your benefit, and that's where you can move quickly so that you can move slowly when the time comes.
Thank you, Paul. So carrying on that theme, actually, you talked about Sales Navigator. You talked about the sort of the artificial intelligence and analytics that sit within various different platforms. I'm really interested to hear how you think the most successful salespeople are taking ownership of their own research, using the tools like Sales Navigator.
So where I've seen success, and that's both within my own business and among clients with whom I'm speaking on a regular basis, it's where they're, having defined their universe, having defined the people with whom they want to engage, counterintuitively, the first thing they don't do is engage. The first thing they don't do is start, approaching and hoping that something will stick. And they're using tools like Sales Navigator, like Google Alerts, various other, technologies out there that allow them to listen for and watch for triggers. Mm-hmm. So that when, allowing you to prioritize and reprioritize in the moment based upon what your target audience are doing, when they're getting mentioned in the news, when they're commenting or posting on LinkedIn. And these triggers allow you to be timely and appropriate in your outreach. So when they're conducting the research, they're waiting for the right trigger, and then they're using that as the hook with which to engage their customer. And that's taking a lot of ownership. That's mm-hmm. not sitting and waiting for the lead list or waiting for your sales development people to furnish you with open doors. It's taking that scaled universe that is your territory or their territory, and scaling it down so that you can be really custom at that last mile in a very granular way when engaging your customers. And it's working terribly, terribly well, because what we see from the marketplace, what the buyers are telling us is that no longer does that undifferentiated, untimely outreach resonate with them, that they have control and they pick and choose when to engage. So if you're going to proactively initiate that engagement, there better be something in it for the client.
I love that prioritization, the planning, but also the personalization. But doing that using a scaled approach. So many good points in there, Paul. Thank you. Now, clearly, we need to be allocating ourselves adequate research time, but a couple of the people that posted questions previously wanted to know, is there an appropriate ratio between the time spent researching and the time spent prospecting? Sinead, I'm going to come to you for this one, if that's okay.
So I don't think it's ever as simple as just saying spend 30% of your time researching and 70% prospecting, and then you'll close X amount of revenue. It's never that simple. But I do think we need to be giving the research part of that process as much consideration as we've given prospecting in the past. You can't really prospect successfully if you haven't done your research. The two really go hand in hand, and it comes back to how you define productivity. So maybe instead of focusing on how many calls your team has made, or maybe we should concentrate sometimes on how many profiles they've viewed, or how much content they've engaged with or shared on their social channels. It's really about reframing the concept of what productivity actually is that will drive sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some real historical metrics that sales teams seem to continue to dig into, but with the advancement of the sales tools and the sort of the technology that we have at our fingertips, maybe it is a time for us to sort of pivot on some of those metrics and measure the things that matter as opposed to the things that we've always measured. Mitali, I'm gonna come to you next. Touching on what was said about the importance of recognizing the value of research. One of the questions that was about how sales teams can quickly and accurately document virtual contact time so that there's a value assigned to it. It's fair to say that in sales, we can be guilty of documenting the opening and the closing of a deal, but not filling in all the steps as you go through the process. How do you think sellers can get around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one really likes documenting, and I'm not going to say that documenting necessarily is the best, most productive use of a seller's time. So for sure, most modern sales tools, including Sales Navigator, try as much as possible to make this workflow as seamless as possible for the sales rep, so that they're not really spending a lot of time documenting. Sales Navigator in particular, we've designed really to the workflow to minimize the context switching between Sales Navigator, the app, and your CRM, especially when it comes to going back and forth and documenting between the two. So things like lead and contact creation, correcting matches, right? All of that can be done and completed within Sales Navigator fairly simply, so that these workflows don't require you to leave the app and go into CRM and back, and just sort of make you that much more productive. And then similarly, when it comes to documenting, all of your activity, as you mentioned, we have what we call CRM activity write back. So it just makes it really simple and seamless for reps to capture all of their LinkedIn activity, as well as all of their Sales Navigator activity and communication and outreach and research that they're doing on their accounts and leads into CRM really effectively. So absolutely, I think documenting is important, especially when we all work in collaborative environments. You're not the only one working on any particular account, but as much as possible, I think this is where tools can really come in handy and help you achieve that more productively.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. People don't like documenting, but from a bigger picture perspective, it really does benefit more than just the person that's putting the detail into the system. That leads us on quite nicely to the next question. For some people, they're still, taking their first foray into a tool like Sales Navigator. But for a more experienced user, what steps can they take on a day-to-day basis to become more productive? Mitali, I'll stick with you.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely. I mean, I think as you mentioned, I mean, there's just the basics of Sales Navigator when it comes to all of the jobs that a salesperson needs to do, from prospecting to qualifying to building and maintaining those relationships, and as well as like prioritizing your accounts. And all of these are jobs that really Sales Navigator, we try to make it simple and provide tools for you to do effectively. But from a very, very practical feature perspective, the first thing that I'll mention is alerts. I think Paul talked about this. So just this idea of the best salespeople wait for these triggers and these hooks so that they can be more relevant with their outreach and more timely. And one of the of course, primary features in Sales Navigator is alerts and the alert feed. But on top of that, what I would love for people to do more is actually filter the alerts. So you can filter them and see just the alerts for your latest, for your highest priority accounts, for example, and for a particular account that you're tracking. And that really helps you craft that sort of timely and better outreach for those accounts. Similarly, on staying on alerts, we recently launched the ability to bookmark alerts. This is a great feature. For example, you don't always have everything that you need to do that outreach or take that action right then and there when you see an alert. You may need more information. You may need to wait for an appropriate time, but you don't want to forget about this event that happened. So the ability to bookmark your alerts lets you sort of save that alert to act upon later, especially in a busy news cycle when there's a lot happening with your accounts. On the topic of research, super important. We've recently redesigned the account page completely so that you get a single holistic view of your account, everything from just basic company information, headcount growth, all of the data that LinkedIn, of course, has on that company, but as well as the alerts and insights about that account on sort of a single page, and of course the account map as well, so that you can really dive deep into that account and craft these customized and personalized outreach. And then the last thing I'll mention from an advanced feature perspective is for CRM connected users, we have a new feature, the champions list, that is launching this quarter, and it's ramping to our customers right now, actually. And this automatically tracks your prior customers in your CRM who have now moved to new companies that are in your book of business. So the idea being you can leverage these existing relationships that you've built to close new business. And we're gonna start to do more of these auto-generated and system-generated lists in SalesNav, and this is the first one.
Can I just say, actually, just on that, to hear that, because you talked a minute ago, Becky, about documenting details is not our forte as salespeople, but there's a direct benefit. If in my CRM application, I'm documenting those involved in the deals with whom I'm working, then that can come back to benefit me or a colleague of mine in the future when they surface again somewhere else. If I don't document, I won't get those alerts. So there's something in it for all of us.
Yeah,
yes, it's a perfect example.
I guess if you look at it from the sort of the some of the things you said earlier, Paul, planning, dig into the bookmarking and the champions list, prioritization, really lean into the filtering, and then research, dig into that account page redesign to see the overall view of the company that you're looking to engage with. So there's an awful lot of stuff there that I think you can do, from taking you from basic to really experienced user. Okay, so moving on from the importance of research and how it's absolutely key to helping us build stronger relationships, we received a lot of questions on how sellers can capture the attention of potential customers. So this is your space, Paul. Aside from those face-to-face and phone conversations, people are really keen to find out what are the most sales efficient tools to drive engagement and also conversations. Paul, I'm going to pass to you on this.
So I would say when making a sale, there will always have been two elements that were necessary in any successful sale: interest and trust, right? So in a conventional sales environment, we typically focused on the interest first, right? So it was that cold call, and you either had whoever you listened to, it was either 15 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever it was, to capture the interest of the person on the other end of the line, to earn the right to have a more prolonged conversation. And over time, you build trust. Mm. In the context that we operate in with today, this buyer first context, I would argue that's been really turned on its head, right? So trust is the number one prerequisite to have a meaningful commercial conversation. So I'm not going to talk so much about tools or technologies, but more about, I would say, an approach to build that trust is to very much leverage the philosophy of buyer first, which is to give before you get, to earn the right to have a conversation about interest. And how do you do that? Well, you spend time congregating where your clients are. You spend time on the platforms or in the places where you know your customers are. and you engage them and you give to them. You add value without asking for anything in return. It may sound altruistic, and to a certain degree it is, because you're sowing a lot of seeds without measuring in terms of traditional metrics, without measuring any progress. So if your leader or your manager is asking, show me your data on cold calls or how many emails you've sent, you're probably not going to show up very good or very well in that context. But sowing those seeds, adding that value over time, when you've got the opportunity to have a conversation that leads to interest, you're going to accelerate that conversation because you've already built the trust. So that's how I would strongly recommend that B2B sales professionals consider going about their pipeline building these days.
Great, thank you, Paul. So another question or area that people wanted us to dive into was our views on personalized video email. One of our viewers said, I really like the idea of sending videos via smart link, but without having a thumbnail image, how do you capture their attention and encourage them to actually click on the link? Sinead, what's your view on this, please?
I suppose ultimately sellers really need to cut through the noise when they're reaching out to potential buyers. Mm-hmm. And Paul just mentioned and spoke a lot about trust, right? So our research really shows that trust is the most important factor when it comes to influencing a buying decision, and putting a face to a name is a great way to build trust. So that's why video can be really, really effective. Mm-hmm. And memorable way to forge initial introductions. And it's really the closest medium that we have to replace face-to-face meetings, which we don't have at the moment. I think on the smart links question though, I think Mitali, you might be better positioned to talk about the thumbnails and the links.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I'll answer the smart links question, but just touching on going back to the, making sure that you're reaching out to the right customers at the right time, the right prospects at the right time. We've spent a lot of time from the product team really thinking about what we're calling, buyer interest. And there's a number of signals that, of course, LinkedIn has in terms of data, such as how your buyers or sellers are engaging with one another just on LinkedIn.com. We have, as you know, hundreds of millions of members that are regularly interacting with one another. And we take a number of these signals, such as, whether your marketing team has targeted the ads to these buyers, and are they clicking on them, to things like, are they visiting, for example, your CEO's profile on LinkedIn? Are they commenting on your company pages, posts? All of these signals go into our buyer intent models that really then showcase the right buyers to you at the right time for outreach. So I think while video and the format of the message for sure is important, it's far more important that you're reaching the right people, and we really strive to do that in the product. As far as smart links, I mean, really the biggest advantage of smart links is the fact that it can be tracked. So you can sort of see all of the metrics around, did this video get watched? How much of it got watched? Did it get forwarded around? Things like that. And so that's the benefit. On the flip side, in terms of the thumbnail and whether you can customize it, I know we've heard that feedback from different channels from our users, and it's something that we'll definitely consider, how to make just the presentation of the video smart links better in the in-mail and email, because smart links work in any communication channel, not just LinkedIn in-mail. So that's definitely good feedback. Another thing that I'll say when it comes to messaging is, of course, warm introductions always go a lot further than any kind of cold outreach, again, regardless of the format. And so with our team link functionality, our users can take advantage of not just their network on LinkedIn, but their colleagues' networks on LinkedIn, and make sure that they're reaching out with the warm introduction to the prospects as well. So definitely make sure to take advantage of that.
Great, Ms. Harley, thank you. So more questions from our viewers. One of our viewers has asked us, they've said that they've been interested to see prospects and customers' positive responses to web meetings being recorded and shared, which really wasn't the case, several years ago. What's the panel's experience of this, and how do you think recording these sessions can be used to help selling? Sinead, can I come to you first, please?
So I suppose from a personal point of view, as part of my role at the moment, I'm part of a worldwide team. And the ability to listen to calls which I can't attend due to time zones means that I still feel very included. Right? So it means I don't have to get up in the middle of the night, but I don't miss very important things. On the flip side, for our customers, I think it's become very valuable for our customers and buyers to have the ability to use either pre-recorded content, which can be looked at before a meeting as a pre-read. It can really help prepare calls in advance. I think time is precious. So leveraging some of that content before calls can really help you get to the nub of the matter when you're on the call. But it also means sometimes when you can't get hold of everybody, that everybody is aware of what's happened. And I think the follow-up and the turnaround on lots of different stages of the sales processes have really been sped up, because there is more of an acceptance of recording those meetings or sending pre-recorded content. So to me, it's actually been one of the directions it's been a step in the right direction to help me be better at my job and my sales teams.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Sinead, from you, having that ability to record creates inclusivity. It means that teams remain engaged because you have that flow of conversation, albeit recorded, that you can revert to and you can listen to. So sticking with that, and excuse me, sparking interest. One of our viewers has messaged us to say that getting from an early lead to a credibility call is proving to be the hardest part for them. Do we have any tips on getting further engagement beyond that initial lead? And Paul, given your new business experience, I'm gonna ask you to answer this one.
Yeah, so I would go back. I would revisit the concept of trust on this one, right? So it's a very noisy place. Our clients are bombarded on a daily, hourly basis. And I don't know about you, but think about the last time that you might have, as a buyer, you may have gone from a cold call straight through to consideration and purchase. It was probably a very long time ago, if ever. And so the trust needs to be built. And one of the commentaries that is always in my head is that great salespeople are present where their clients congregate. So being present, adding value, like I said earlier. A great example, we have a customer that outfits offices. So they sell office, I know I'm minimizing this, but they sell office space, right? Or office furniture, and they outfit big office installations. And they've encouraged their sales organization to be present on LinkedIn, I'm happy to say, because that's where their buyers congregate. But they're also encouraging them to be present on Pinterest. And I scratched my head when I heard that first, but the global head of marketing explained to me that influencers on those purchasing decisions, they are interior designers and they are architects. And these are very visual jobs, and Pinterest is a very visual platform. So their salespeople are present on Pinterest as well as on LinkedIn and other platforms, and they are engaging and building that trust. And so going from that lead, it's so much easier to get to that point of consideration, to get to that meeting, if you've already got some level of presence. May not have to have been direct, but some level of presence where those clients have congregated. So they might be familiar with your company name. They might even be familiar with your own individual name, and already there's a barrier reduced. And then to the point earlier, a warm introduction trumps everything, right? So, if you can find your way to have an introduction, to be introduced by somebody who is trusted by both parties, look, you're halfway there. So that would be the approach, again, that I would recommend.
Yeah. So that warm outreach is so important. We find, Paul, that a lot of our sellers seem to get stuck at a certain level within an organization. What about getting a CTO or a CFO on a cold call from a cold outreach? I mean, is it possible? And what advice would you have there?
Well, gosh, I mean, so you know, we know the C-suite are they're the people you want to get, they're the people your competitors want to get. And within that C-suite, the CFO, the CMO, and the CTO or CIO are probably the most targeted titles. You know, it was hard to get one of those individuals and catch them at their desk randomly between meetings before the pandemic. It's a lot harder when they don't even have a desk to be at. And post-pandemic, when we go back to what looks to be some kind of a hybrid working model between work and home, the opportunities of catching them in those moments of serendipity really strike me as slim to none. Mm-hmm. So catching them, getting a meeting from that cold call, highly unlikely, I would say. The first thing we need to do is we need to understand who's on the buying committee. And we know data tell us that, you know, the buying committee has become more complex and more expanded and extensive over the last number of years. So mapping out who's on the buying committee is a hugely important starting point. And again, technologies like LinkedIn can make those maps more obvious to us, right? Because we can plot the individuals, we can understand what the relationships are hierarchically, internally, and we know from previous buying conversations who tends to be involved in these types of discussions. Then adding the traceability that comes with smart links, and it's really opening up a world of individuals to whom we may not have had any visibility in the past. Yeah. So, you know, if you're alerted that that proposal you sent through 2 weeks ago to the head of infrastructure is now being viewed by the CTO, and the CTO is spending her time predominantly focusing on pricing, well, you know what, that's a great opportunity to reach that CTO right now and have a conversation about pricing. So these would be some of the methods that, again, we encourage, or I encourage certainly within my team.
Thank you, Paul. That really does lead us on nicely to the next question. And you touched on it slightly just then. One of our viewers has asked, are you finding that buyers are less available for calls? Has anyone experienced a change in reaching buyers, specifically new buyers? And if so, do you have any workarounds or any tips that you could share?
Yes. So actually, I just recently got exposed to some very interesting data that we're now making available for ourselves and indeed for our clients, which is around the effectiveness of in-mails. So for example, I know, as of reviewing these data yesterday only, I know that the acceptance rate on the in-mails sent by my team is at its highest when those in-mails are sent on a Wednesday. Now, I would have guessed a Sunday, personally, and it most likely is going to vary from client to client and company to company. But within my organization, those in-mails sent on a Wednesday have the highest level of response. Why it's Wednesday at this point, I have no idea. I'm still trying to, get my head around the data. So, therefore, I've now got something actionable where I can go to my team and say, look, if you want to maximize your opportunities, maximize your chance of engagement, follow some of these guidelines that the data are telling us. In addition, we know down to character level how long or short an effective in-mail can be. Mm-hmm. And the guidance we provide to the user when they're opening up an email and they're sending it is we've literally got a color-coded actually word count that is, green, then orange, and then red, depending on how long you're writing the message. So the data-driven insights we can provide to users give them so much more ammunition than, trying to understand how many cold calls do I need in order to make a contact. And as I mentioned earlier, the success rate of cold calls is precipitously dropping given the absence all of our buyers are having from their desks and the virtual environment in which they're operating. So I would say pivot towards outreach attempts that allow you to track and analyze your success, and then double down on those elements that are working while foregoing those elements that do not work.
Yeah. And that ties back nicely with what Sinead said earlier, that sort of data-driven approach and shifting some of the metrics that perhaps you use in your business or you've used in your business in the past to actually leaning into metrics that you can measure and you can see through the technology that you're using. Thank you, Paul. So we've talked a lot about technology.
And sorry, can I jump in for a second there, Becky? So one of the side, just when Paul mentioned that, it's really interesting. So when you look at data-driven approaches, it's not just the communication itself that you need to track, which is awesome to hear about the in-mail acceptance. But we've actually found, going back to this idea of where your buyers are congregating, we found things like commenting on your buyers' posts, for example, on LinkedIn, has a significantly higher. So the sellers who engage with their buyers' posts on LinkedIn and comment on them and sort of react to them have 30% or 40% higher close rates than the sellers who don't. So this is the idea of how else can you sort of like bubble up above the noise and show that you are really paying attention to what your buyers are saying and what they're putting out there. And again, going back to do the kinds of activities that you can then track and measure and then and encourage amongst your sales team. So
yeah, so you're building that trust as you go. You're showing interest. You're demonstrating value. It's a holistic process, isn't it? It's not just one way of doing it. Lots of ways that you can build. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the technology piece there. We've had one specific question around the Sales Navigator account map and the way that it can be used. One of our viewers was wondering if there's a way to visualize the map on screen or print it to add a business plan. Mitali, could you answer that one?
Yeah, this is something that also has come up. It's always interesting when you launch any feature as a product person. It's always curious to see how users react, and when you have millions or hundreds of millions of users, you can't always make everybody happy in the first version. So what I will say is that there is a lot more coming to the account map. This is our first entry into this particular feature, and this idea of being able to present it in kind of a single page view, print it, share it with your leadership is something that's coming up as a common request. So I'll definitely take that feedback to the team. But I will speak to some of the things that we are already working on in the account map. As follow-on features, the ability to filter your account map by function and by geographical region is something that's come up a lot, because you may, if you have a really large account, you may be looking at a specific office, region, or function within that large account. The ability to share and collaborate on the account map. So if you have an account team, all of you being able to add to the account map instead of just this individual view that we have today. That's something that we're working on. Color coding, just really quickly being able to see who's a supporter versus a detractor within your buying committee. So those are a number of the things. Easier access to sort of notes from within the account map as well, or lead creation, contact creation. Straight from within the account map. So many of these things you'll see come into the account map in the next few quarters.
Oh, that's excellent. It sounds like there's a lot to come. So the coming months and quarters are going to get very interesting. Thank you, Mitali. Right, to finish off, a couple of people have been in touch to ask, what is the future of sales post-pandemic? How much of this digital and virtual approach that we've put in place over the last sort of 16 plus months are going to stay? And what importance will face-to-face meetings have in the future? I'd like all of your opinions on this. So maybe, Paul, if we come to you first.
Look, I, for one, very much look forward to sitting down face to face across the table, breaking bread with clients of mine in the future. Absolutely. And I believe that that's going to have a place in the B2B cycle of sales going forward. I think it's going to be a different place, though. I think it's going to be less important throughout the sales cycle. It might feature early on or late on, but it's what the key to remember is that it's going to be at the behest of the buyer. Mm-hmm. The buyer has dramatically shifted their preferences. They've communicated those preferences to us by the way they interact with us as sales professionals. And I don't believe that they're going to forego the advantages and the efficiencies that digital communication tools give them. Mm-hmm. 30-minute meetings have become the norm in the space of 18 months. Anything longer and it feels like a marathon. So I think we're going to see a lot of the efficiency stay, but it's going to be driven by the buyer. And we need to be agile and we need to be responsive to what their needs will be.
Thank you, Paul. Mitali, any comments from you?
Yeah, I mean, just building on that, I feel like one of the maybe good things that has come out of this pandemic, as far as like definitely selling is concerned, is this idea of like really putting your buyers first, really doing your research, your homework before reaching out. And I am pretty hopeful that this will continue post pandemic, whether you have in person or virtual meetings, just really understanding your buyers' needs before you go into that meeting.
Thank you, Mitali. Sinead, anything you'd like to comment?
I suppose we're all still in a world where everyone is a virtual seller. And based on our reports, half of our buyers don't really expect to meet people face-to-face until the second half of this year. And actually 16% don't expect to meet people face-to-face until 2022. So we still have a bit of a way to go on the journey that we're on. We're also seeing the rise of remote working, and we're also looking at hybrid working situations where people want to work 50% of their time in the office and 50% at home. So again, another reason why some of the things that have happened this year will probably continue. When we look at we do a state of sales report where we survey our customers and our sellers to see how they feel. And according to them, their view is that we've become much more reliant on sales technology to really leverage in-depth knowledge of customers to build relationships. And also the accuracy of the data that we're using has become more and more important to really make sure that we're targeting the right people. So I think all of these trends have improved the buyer experience. And if we continue to focus on those things that have changed in the last 18 months, we can only really improve how we interact with our buyers in the future. So in a way, some of the things that have happened in the last 18 months are going to make those customer journeys much more beneficial with a better outcome.
Thanks, Sinead. So that concludes our bonus episode. A really large thank you to everyone that's tuned in and sent in their questions. We hope you found this discussion useful and that it's given you a better understanding of the current outlook for the sales industry. And last but not least, thank you to Sinead, Mitali and Paul for sharing their insights with us. From all of us here at LinkedIn, we hope you stay safe and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye-bye, guys, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.